The AFIB Show brings you stories, interviews, lifestyle coaching, and information meant entirely for those with atrial fibrillation, atrial flutter, troublesome ectopic beats, or other heart rhythm disturbances.
Let's go. Yo, I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it, fuse like a magnet. Lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shoot tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. I'm never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast, and that's facts. Only I can make a change. Slowly take a step today. I will never be the same. Cause that's what it takes.
Okay, AFIBBERS, it's time. Let's go live with Big Northern Bear.
Pieces is a form of art. I'm never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast, and that's facts. Only I can make a change. Slowly take a step today.
I think you're muted, Danny.
Thanks, brother. You got my back. Eh? You're already gunning for the producer chair, and you just got here.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is Big Northern Bear. You're on the AFIB Show. Today I have a special guest I'm quite excited for, Travis Van Slooten. Travis has been, in my mind, he's the OG web blogger for AFIB, because he's the first sort of site I came across by an AFIBBER for AFIBBERS. And I've read in the past 2 of his ablation things his articles when I was researching ablation, and I went through his dietary advice, and I'm really thrilled to have you here today, Travis. So thank you for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate the invite. I look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, so I see someone's already asked in the chat, and I threw it on the screen, but they're wondering where they can watch this later. So it's the same link. I'll just throw that in chat for you. Okay, so anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. I see looks like there's about 12 people watching. Guys, you have questions? Travis and we're going to interact with the audience. That's the plan today. But I think, Travis, I'd like to get you started off. Just tell me and my viewers how you were introduced to AFIB.
Yeah, so I was introduced to AFIB I was officially diagnosed on Father's Day, 2006, after a night of very heavy drinking. I used to, as I told you before we did this show, I used to be a pretty big partier. I drank a lot. And this particular night was a pretty rough night, and I woke up and heavily hungover. And then my way of chasing my hangovers back then was just lots of caffeine, fried food, and which was probably the worst thing you can do with someone that's, got AFib, which I didn't know I had at the time. But then that evening on Father's Day, I just sat down on my couch eating a Wendy's meal, to be exact. Actually, I think it was Dairy Queen. But anyway, the only reason I remember that is because I was eating some ice cream, and then boom, the cold ice cream just, as I was sitting down taking a bite of ice cream, my heart just took off. And I was like, whoa, what the heck is that? And I just thought, well, it must be something related to the drinking. It must be a hangover thing still. But it didn't stop. It just kept going, and I'm freaking out. And I'm thinking I'm like having a heart attack. And my wife's looking at me like, "You okay? Is everything all right?" I'm like, "I don't know." I said, "I think you're going to have to call the ambulance." And she was freaking out. And I said, "I don't know what's going on." So yeah, so I got an ambulance ride to the hospital, and they gave me a cardioversion and told me I had atrial fibrillation. I had no idea what the heck that was. Now, it was fortunate that the ER doc didn't make a big deal out of it. She was just like, "Yeah, you have atrial fibrillation, so you'll just want to follow up with your cardiologist or a cardiologist as soon as you can." But that's all she said. She didn't say, it's nothing to be concerned about.
Did
And
you
so
feel like when that similar scenario happened to me, although without all the fun of a big binge, but did you feel like you went in freaked out and everyone there was like, this is just so run of the mill for them? Like it was a big nothing from their point of view.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much. When I was in the ambulance, the EMT guys were like, they were calm as can be, and they were just like, no big deal. And I'm sitting there like, and that was actually kind of comforting to me because I thought, well, if I was having a heart attack, these guys would be like in more of a panic, and they were just, I mean, it was like no big deal. Like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll take you to the hospital, and then yeah, when I got there, everyone was calm. They weren't overly concerned. And I was just like, okay, well, that's good news, I guess. It must mean I'm not having a heart attack or something serious because no one's really reacting that way. So yeah, that was.
So how did it progress from there?
Well, so then I made an appointment with a cardiologist, and again, the Lord's really looked over me throughout this journey because it could have been a nightmare because I could have gone to a cardiologist and the guy could have freaked me out and put me on drugs, and it could have been a nightmare scenario for me. But he was a very old cardiologist, very old school. I mean, this guy was in his 70s. And it turns out he ended up retiring about 2 months after I met him or had my appointment with him. And he was just like, this is no big deal. You're probably never going to have another episode again. He said, I'll put you on a heart monitor just to make sure, there's nothing going on. But I don't think we're going to have any issues. You're a young guy, you're healthy, don't worry about it, was the gist of the appointment. And so they put me on a 24-hour Holter monitor. And of course that came back, I was in normal sinus rhythm, no issues. So he's just like, when I handed it in 24 hours later, he was just like, yeah, everything looks fine. You're fine. Live your life. And, that's literally kind of how it ended. But he never really explained it to me. One thing I do remember him saying to me, though, he's like, well, and if this ever does return, we have drugs that can treat it. And we have this thing called an ablation now that can put it to rest. So he said, it's nothing to worry about. It's not life-threatening. People don't die from this. So I was like, oh, okay. But he didn't explain it to me. Like, he didn't tell me what it was or anything. He just said, don't worry about it. If it comes back, we can fix it. So,
I think that I want to comment on what he said to you about people don't die from this. And I think that is something I like to kind of point out in my videos now and then, is nobody dies of AFib, because I think a lot of people aren't told that.
Yes.
Right? And they're like, so they're walking around thinking there's a grenade in their chest that could just go off at any time.
Yep.
And that's it. But I think, and maybe you'll agree, but the right way to view your AFib is this is a warning or a wake-up call, and it's giving you the opportunity to try to turn some things around before you have those types of concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You definitely don't die from AFib. You die from, I think, the way I always say it is you die from the effects of AFib if you don't treat your AFib. And that is, stroke and heart failure. That's what you ultimately die of if you don't take it seriously and, do something about it.
Right.
So getting back to the doctor, so from 2006 to 2014, I had maybe one episode every year or two. So I had paroxysmal AFib, and I wasn't on any drugs, blood thinners, antiarrhythmics, or anything, because again, remember the doctor said, go live your life, you're fine. And it's also important to point out that I did not change anything. I continued my diet, my drinking, everything was fine.
Well, you kind of had that assurance that this is probably just a one-off thing, and
yeah. And
was it in your mind? I just won't get as drunk next time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually what happened. So that was the thing. That was the last night, that the day before Father's Day was the last time I got drunk. I haven't been drunk since. Now,
congratulations on at least making that change.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was at least smart enough to say, well, I don't want to go through that again, so I'm not going to drink like that again. And so, yeah, I'd stopped the hardcore drinking like that. So, but in that span then, from 2006 to 2014, I had an episode once every year or two. So there was some times in there where I would go 2 years before I would have an episode. And the way I treated it back then, or during that time period, was I'd get a cardioversion. And so I would go into AFib, kind of freak out about it, but at least I knew what it was, I knew what to expect, and I knew I didn't have to call the ambulance, because they told me, and that was the other thing my doctor told me was, look, you don't need to call an ambulance, you can just have someone drive you here.
Right.
So my procedure was, Michelle, it's my wife, I'm in AFib again, so we're going to have to go to the hospital. And then we'd drive there, and, it was a 2 to 4 hour event, get cardioverted, come home, and then I was good for like a year. That was my journey. And then towards the end of 2014, I started getting episodes pretty regularly, like once every few months, and then it was every other week, and it was like kind of all over the place. And I got tired of getting cardioversions, and so my doctor said, well, we could try this.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So he's like, we can do the pill in the pocket approach. Now I'm like, whoa, what is this? I never heard this before. And he's like, well, we can give you flecainide that you can take as needed. So like when you have an episode, you can take flecainide, and there's a good chance it'll convert you on your own. I'm like, whoa, are you serious? I'm like, where have you been all my life? Like, this is a game changer. It completely changed my entire outlook, because I used to freak out when I'd go into AFib. Not because of the AFib, but because of the whole driving to the hospital.
Now the night's ruined, and you're not going to be good for work the next day. And
to me, I hate hospitals to begin with. And it's just the whole like, oh my gosh, I got to deal with the ER and sitting in a room for 4 hours. And of course, the cardioversion, while it's painless, that's a pain in the neck. It's just the whole thing was just such a buzzkill. So, but anyway, so he tells me about this pill.
Let me jump in with a viewer comment. Are you able to see the comments on the screen? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so Gail, my brother had a stroke, and in the hospital they found out he had AFib. So he sort of went in with the downstream effect. So did he have silent AFib, Gail? Was that the thing? Was your AFib silent? Definitely not.
Oh my gosh, no. I only wish it was silent. Holy cow. No, I was like, when I went into AFib, man, it was like, wow. I couldn't function. Just awful stuff, man. For me, it's just terrible.
Yeah, so it sounds like he had silent AFib.
Yeah.
He didn't know he had it.
Yep.
It's funny how that people can skate by for like years and years, and not even like you and me, we feel our AFib intensely when we're in it.
Yep.
I can't even imagine someone just skating by for years, and then one day someone just checks their pulse.
Yeah.
And they find out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just can't even imagine it. Like in some ways I'm jealous, but I just can't imagine it.
It's a blessing and a curse for those people. We'll talk about it with my dad, because he had silent AFib, which is what Gail's brother had. Basically asymptomatic. You don't feel anything. my dad had that, and it just always blew my mind because like I don't know how you can like how your heart can be doing this and you don't feel it, but so getting back here just to close the loop on that, so they told me about this pill in the pocket thing, and so they sent me home with flecainide, and then I just had it handy, and then of course I went into AFib eventually, and I tried the Fleck, and it worked like within an hour.
Oh,
I
great.
converted. It was like I can't even describe like how happy I was because it's like sweet. Now unfortunately, I started getting AFib quite regularly, so it got to the point where it was like I can't just keep popping flecainide every time I have an episode. So, and I didn't want to go on it daily or anything, and so that's what led me down the route of getting an ablation. My first ablation in 2015, in March of 2015. So.
And how many ablations have you had total now?
3.
3. The most recent being?
April 27th.
Yeah.
And that was
we couldn't get him on the show last week, folks.
Yeah, that was a very minor touch-up, like a 7-minute. Literally, they burned for 7 minutes, so it's very minor.
Right. And I'd like to hear about those. So you have this experience where you have intense AFib, but it's fairly well rectified when it appears. The pill in the pocket's working for you. At what point did you start with the blog? And when you started the blog, what did you learn from your audience in terms of their experience that surprised you?
Well, I started my blog. My blog was started, I want to say 2012. So I had been blogging, about 2 years prior to it getting really bad. And it was started by a guy that had AFib, and the site had like 4 blog posts on it, and he decided to sell it. So I actually purchased the blog from him.
Sure, why not?
Yeah,
that was common back then, right?
So I just started blogging my own journey. During that time, I didn't have a lot of interaction with an audience per se because I didn't really have one. So it was just me kind of writing to myself, because I didn't have much of an audience yet. But I learned more from just spending time in other AFib sources, and the primary being AFIBBERS.org. And it was in there that I learned about, ablations and the importance of finding an expert EP, and that was kind of where my education started. But it was also, there were some other forums at the time that are no longer around, that I just read and read and read and engaged and reached out to people and asked questions, not to share on my blog to help others, but just to selfishly just help myself. Yeah. But then I always vowed that I will share everything I experience on my blog, which I have, to help others. So that was kind of, what I did with the blog when I started, and what I did when the AFib started getting, more frequent.
Fair enough. So I see lots of people in chat. Everyone's a little quiet tonight, but we're dedicated to taking your questions and comments and sharing them. So please, if you have any questions for Travis while he's here, we'd love to hear them. In the meantime, Travis, why don't you share a little bit of the family history and you and your dad going through this together?
Yeah, so my dad, so I got AFib in 2006. I was, I think, 31, 32. Very young, right? This is supposed to be an old person's disease, but I got it very young. And my dad got it, he was officially diagnosed when he was 50. And I'm trying to think of what year that was. It was probably shortly after I was first diagnosed. And I don't remember exactly, but it was kind of the same situation. He was in his living room and he sat down and his heart took off. But now my dad had silent AFib, but for some reason that particular episode, he felt something. Now, when I talked to him back then, it didn't sound like it was anything like I had experienced. He said it was more like he felt a flutter, like a light flutter in his heart. He just thought something was weird. And he was kind of sweating and lightheaded and stuff. And so he too had no idea what was going on, and so he called the ambulance, and they came, and they ended up having to defibrillate him on the couch. Now that was the EMT's error. I'm not sure why they did that. I don't know why they. That is not normal. I can't imagine EMTs would defibrillate someone in AFib, and why they would jump to that. But he's in a
maybe he was having some like ventricular response as well, which is pretty dangerous, right?
I have no idea, but so he took a pretty powerful jolt, and him and I used to joke about that because that he was cardioverted without any anesthesia or anything, and but so he was converted, and of course then they took him to the hospital, and they said, yeah, you have AFib. And so they put him on, I think, metoprolol at the time. And I don't even think he was on a blood thinner. I don't even think they put him on a blood thinner, to be honest with you. If they did, I don't think he took it. But from that moment on, he was in silent AFib because he said he could feel it from time to time, this slight like flutter. And when he would go into the doctor every now and then, which for him was every couple of years, he hated doctors. He said that they would tell him, yeah, you're an AFib, and he was like, really? I had no idea. And so they would up his medications or adjust his medications. And he might have been no, he wasn't on a blood thinner. And I know that because right before he died, he decided he would probably a good idea to start taking a blood thinner. But so he went like a period of 10 years in silent AFib. Now, what we don't know is if he was in persistent AFib or permanent AFib, or if it was paroxysmal, because it
wasn't investigated.
It was never investigated. He never had a heart monitor. He never checked it. So it's hard to know how bad his AFib was, what the burden was. But he had it to some degree or to a large degree for 10 years. And then he ultimately...
I'm sorry for the passing of your father, though. I mean,
yeah,
I can
thanks.
relate. My dad died when I was young of cancer, but
yeah,
it must have been...
It was tough.
Please continue.
Yeah, it was tough because him and I are, we were best friends. He was my best friend. We spent so much time together. So that was a tough loss.
And then you ended up having the AFib in common too, which...
Yeah, well, and it really threw me for a loop was, first of all, to lose your father at a young age, all that, being so close to him, that is hard enough. But he died, I suspect, of AFib, not from AFib, but again, the after effects, heart failure. Because when he admitted to the hospital on Saturday, and he ended up dying on Sunday evening, he had total right side heart failure. And as a result of that, all of his organs were shutting down, which is why he died so quickly. Yeah. But so he shows up to the ER in total right side heart failure. And,
Yeah, so that just for those who aren't aware, but the right side heart failure means the blood is not returning from your lungs.
Yeah.
Like it's not getting back to the heart because that right side's not pulling it in. So that's...
So yeah, he was, he had heart failure. And, because my dad never went to doctors and didn't care about his health, his whole thing was, I'm going to put my head in the sand. That's how he dealt with it.
Do you think he had, and to me that just screams of an anxiety reaction. Like a lot of us have anxiety about our AFib. So before I get into that, I just want to share Carol's comment. Carol Quant, sorry if I pronounce that. Just want to say how much Travis has helped me.
Oh, hey,
Thank
Carol.
you so much.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I'm glad I was able to help.
Yeah, we're glad to host you too, because I think you've helped a lot of people over the years.
Yeah, well, I do my best to help. I wish I could do more. That's my biggest frustration is I wish I was a doctor so I could actually help people. I feel kind of helpless.
I don't think a doctor can help people the way you help people. I think there's a special role for people with AFib, just to be that common man that other people who have AFib can talk to.
Yep.
So the anxiety, like a lot of us, the two-part question, let's say, but
Yeah.
Did your AFib come packaged with anxiety the way it did for so many of us? And do you think that was the case for your dad? And where his anxiety reaction perhaps was denial, yours was more of, okay, what can I do about it?
Yeah. I will say I didn't have any anxiety, really, to be honest with you. I personally didn't. Well, when it started getting worse, I got to be honest with you, it was never anxiety, it was anger. Because I was angered at the of dealing with, like potentially having to go to the hospital and the meds and all this. And I just was like, I don't want to deal with this, So it was more of an anger thing for me. And for my dad, I can tell you, my dad, his whole philosophy was, like it or not, his philosophy was, I'm going to live life to the fullest the way I want to live it. And he used to always tell me jokingly, we're all going to die of something someday. So just live your life. And
there's a lot of bravado in that, because I just imagine myself in his shoes. I've got AFib. My son has AFib.
Yeah.
What do I think my son needs me to say?
Yeah.
Like he's being a good dad, right? Like he's just being a good dad for you.
Yeah, and I would say that, and obviously being as close as I was to him, he truly believed in that, and that was his motto. Like
That's good.
And his philosophy too, which he shared with me, was not pertaining to AFib, but we'd get into these. Oftentimes we'd sit down drinking together, and by the way, he was a heavy drinker too, cocktail drinker, not like getting drunk drinker, but have a couple cocktails a night, that kind of guy. And
right.
So oftentimes him and I would get together and have a couple cocktails and get into these long philosophical conversations. And one of the things he would tell me was, he said, if I ever came down with cancer, I'm the kind of person that I don't know that I'd want to go through that treatment. I would rather just live my life to the fullest until I got super sick. And then I just died. He said, call it selfish. He said, I just don't want to deal with the treatment, because his whole thing was the treatment is often worse than the disease, right? So he's like, I don't want to go through all that. I don't want you guys to see it. I don't want to go through it. So I'm going to live life hard and to the fullest. And if something comes along and takes me early, so be it. But I'm not dealing with that. So for him, I know exactly what he was going through. For him, it was, I'm not going to a doctor to get this treated because it's going to take me down a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. It's going to be doctor visits. It's going to be medications, ablations. I'm not dealing with that. So,
right.
And he had the luxury of not having to, because he was in silent AFib. I'm
right.
pretty confident he would have a much different perspective if he experienced it like I experienced it, which was, it was debilitating. I couldn't even function. So for him, he had the luxury of having that philosophy and being able to live it out because he didn't feel it. So until the end.
Say welcome, Sed. I see Big Sed's dropped by.
All right.
He's off his ablation and doing well. So
fantastic.
Yeah. So Sed is another one of these guys who really implemented some lifestyle changes and treated it like a wake-up call. So
awesome.
I mean, it's kind of interesting. You have this whole paternal thing going. You found out on Father's Day, and then your father. Yeah. It's an interesting coincidence. I don't think it means anything, but it's an interesting coincidence. But do you think? I mean, did your father have any sort of inspiration to you to get out there and start blogging? The fact that his approach and his attitude. Do you think maybe you're kind of hoping he reads your stuff and maybe goes and gets that ablation? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah. So I had the blog, right? And that was the thing that I was always kind of amazed me. I was like, Dad, like we never talked about, that's the other thing. We didn't sit around talking about our AFib ever because he didn't want to talk about that kind of stuff. And quite frankly, neither did I. Right. But I would send him emails from time to time. Dad, hey, I just posted this, read it. Hey, Dad, how are you doing? If you need help with anything, I'm always here. And he would always say, hey, I'm fine. It's all good. Just take care of yourself. And if you look at on my website or my blog, I talk about my father's death, and in there I have a screenshot of my last email to him. And I told my dad, look, you need to get, we need to get this taken care of, because, this isn't good what you're going through. Because he was starting to get the effects of what we found out was heart failure.
Right.
And his reply back to me was like, hey, don't worry about me. You get your ablation first. You get taken care of. And once you get your stuff figured out, then you and I can talk about me. So yeah, I did try to get him help and help him, but he just was like, yeah, I'm not interested. So thank you very much. That was kind of
I'm just going to again throw your blog address into the chat for folks, since we're talking about it. But I mean, I would say you have one of these blogs where you're not slammed with a bunch of unnecessary articles. Like, every article in there is worth the read, which I think is great. What I found, there was a lot of white noise when I started researching my AFib. I had a lot of white noise where, there was just a lot of unnecessary stuff. And I wanted, what can I do about it? What worked for someone else?
Yep.
So I really appreciated your blog for that. Sometimes simple and to the point goes so much further than, having 1,000 articles to search through. So, and I mean, like, your articles, every article I've read has brought me a bit of value. So I think that speaks well for your communication ability in that. So
I appreciate that.
The one area I really enjoyed was your dietary section, because I think you mentioned a couple of diets as being possibly effective for AFib. And I was just wondering, what have you tried, and what has your success level been like with dieting to help control your AFib?
Yeah. So I'm going to be brutally honest here, and I'm probably a lot of people are going to be like, oh my gosh, why are we following this guy? This guy's a kook.
I feel that way too when I confess one of my sins, and
yeah, so
it's never happened.
So here's the deal. I don't actually spend a ton of time on diet on my website. I have some articles on it, but I'm going to be completely honest. Those articles were inspired because I was interested in what diets would work best for AFIBBERS. And my research led me to those articles, which is, the Mediterranean diet, the paleo diet, and just basically being healthier with your diet. And so, like I said, my goal is I'm going to share with my audience everything that I go through. So at the time, I was really into looking into diet, so I wrote those articles. I tried to follow them, and I failed after about a day. I was like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do these diets. I just can't. Now, the reason is, I told you, Danny, before when we talked before the show, I am a fast food, junk food junkie. And so, like I said, I think the first thing my mom gave me was probably a bottle of Coke when I was a kid, not milk. I mean,
I hope she's not watching.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, I grew up in the 70s. So, it was like, I just remember drinking pop and fast food, and it didn't help. We had a fast food joint right across the street from my house. So I'd walk over there and I could get a burger and fries for like $1. And so I've been eating crappy since I can remember. And so I would actually say I'm probably addicted to this stuff, to be honest with you. So dieting is impossible for me to eat anything healthy. Fruits and vegetables, I can't stand them. I mean, I eat them, but so
what have you done? You've given up drinking. You're not great at dieting. So what else have you?
Yeah. So, well, I sort of gave up drinking. For a long time there, I didn't drink a lot, but I kind of go in and out of the drinking thing. But even when I do now, it's maybe a cocktail at night, that type of thing. And the food, I still eat pretty crappy, to be honest with you. I just don't eat as much crappy food. I am eating a little better. But as I told you, I've gone through these swings, these weight loss swings, yo-yo dieting. Now, I do have an extensive article on my blog. That's something I actually have done. that works for me, which is counting calories. That is my diet when I want to lose weight.
When you get serious, that's your go-to.
That's my go-to. It works for me like magic. It's never failed, and I typically will lose anywhere from 30 to 40 pounds when I do that. And for me, that diet works because it allows me to eat what I want. I just got to make sure I don't go over my daily calories.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, you know, I track, you know, my blood pressure and stuff over the years. And, you know, someone might say, so you're telling me you lost 30 to 40 pounds eating like crap, but just not as much crap? I'm saying yes. You might have heard of the Twinkie diet. There was a guy.
Yeah, Twinkie diet, potato diet.
Yeah, but I mean, there was a guy.
McDonald's diet. Everyone's done it.
Yeah.
It's been proven over and over again.
Yeah, diets,
Yeah.
every diet works. It's the key is how long can you keep the diet, right? So, so I was just as healthy during but here's the thing though. When I lost, my last time I went through this weight loss, and I can't remember, I think it was leading up to my first ablation in 2015. I lost like 40 pounds leading up to my ablation. I had more AFib while I was losing weight and when I was skinny than I did when I was eating any way I wanted and when I was quote unquote overweight, fat, whatever. So how do you square that, right? So it's like, you know, I got to be honest with you. My motivation was like, wait a minute, I just lost all this weight. Supposedly, if you lose all this weight, you're supposed to be super healthy. And that was not the case with me. And my AFib was worse than it's ever been when I went through that weight loss.
Well, I would say that just from the feedback from my audience, the big thing I learned when I started putting myself out there was AFib it seems the response and the way it affects us seems so individual. Yet we all have this common experience, but like for me, coffee is a zero effect. I could drink 8 gallons of Starbucks Blonde right now and just wouldn't erase my heart at all. But for some people, it sets them off, and
Yep.
And so I'm not surprised to hear you say that you know. So maybe it's the high salt content of your processed food,
Yeah.
or maybe you do better with a slightly low potassium diet. I mean, you might never figure it out.
Yeah.
You might never figure it out,
Yeah.
to be honest. But this is why I think I encourage people. I mean, log this stuff.
Yeah.
Like log it, and then at least you can look back and have a pattern to observe.
Yeah, absolutely. Log it and experiment. That's what I tell everybody. Experiment. Like you said, it's I've learned over the years that I used to be very dogmatic about, here, this is how you beat AFib. You do
Yeah.
this. And I've come to the realization now that that's ridiculous. Everybody's
Yeah.
different. Everybody's experience is unique. What I do, what I can do and get away with, a lot of people probably can't. Likewise, things they do, I probably can't do. So, and what works for me as far as, you know, like the ablation or drugs and whatever, because I get emails all the time from people that say, hey, I've had AFib for 20 years and I've managed it just fine with drugs. Do you think I should get an ablation? And I'm sitting there thinking, now I used to be, oh yeah, absolutely, you need an ablation.
Right.
Well, now I'm like, well, wait a minute. The guy's gone 20 years and he's managing it pretty well and he's healthy. And why would you need an ablation? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So it's a very individual experience for everybody.
Yeah, it's and I think too, you know, the ones that really get to me, I find the younger they are when it first have the onset, when they first AFib appears, the more intense and the more difficult they have. And I'll get the odd comment from this. I'm 38 and I have this, and they're so intense and so scary. Where my older audience, they seem to be more like, you know, more like your dad. They have the maturity to deal with it. First of all, they have that life experience.
Yep.
But I just feel a special pain for these young guys. And I feel, too, I can relate, because mine came on when I was 51, which that's too young to have AFib. And the reason I had AFib at that age is because I didn't look after myself. But like you, I felt angry about it and like, why do I have this old man's problem now?
Yeah.
You know, I'm a competing powerlifter. I can't be doing this.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? I'm supposed to go to nationals, you know?
Yeah.
And so these young men and women, they come in and they're so frustrated, and they're really scared, like, because they it just, when you're that young, it seems to go off more infrequently but more intense. And the older folk, it seems to be far more frequent. Like, I hear from people, they spend 5 to 10 to 20% of their time in AFib, and it's just kind of routine. It's just, I just spend the mornings in AFib, and then I'm good. And there's such a difference between how everyone experiences, and I'd hesitate to even group it by age range, because it's like you can't apply a universal rule anywhere.
Yep. Yeah, and I would say the emails that I get echo that experience, that I tend to get. I don't get a lot of emails from young people, but when I do, that's pretty. They're usually very symptomatic. It's very intense, but not as frequent. And then and I get emails all the time from older people that say, basically, what's the big deal? Like, I've had AFib for 20 years, and it's not that big of a deal. And I often reply back to them, because a lot of times they don't offer their age, but I'll say, can I ask you, how old you are? And they'll be like, yeah, I'm 81, or I'm 80, or I'm 75. And it's just like, wow, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that's been my experience as well.
I think too, it's one of those conditions that's very highly age associated. So most people with AFib are going to be over 65, probably 80%.
Yeah.
So if you live long enough and something else doesn't get you, you'll get AFib one day. If you live long enough.
Exactly. Yep.
You live to 130, you'll probably get AFib, no matter who you are, because it's almost part of aging.
Yep.
And it certainly gets way more common as people hit the decades, like 60 and then 70 and then 80. Like, it gets way more common. So.
Yep.
But fortunately, it's one of those things you can actually treat with lifestyle. Or at least somewhat.
You can at least manage it, correct? Yeah.
Right.
But I will say this, though, and this is the other thing that sometimes, puzzles me, is I get a fair amount of emails from people that will tell me that they basically live perfect lives. I eat nothing but organic. I exercise. I don't drink. I don't smoke. But I have AFib. I've got... I've had 5 cardioversions. I'm on my 3rd ablation. And so when I get those things, it's like, oh, man.
What can they do?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, that circles back to this whole, I don't think there's a one size fits all. Like, I mean, AFib is not discriminatory. It affects
Maybe
everybody.
they should try your McDonald's diet for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who knows, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, I've had a couple of those, and it's really hard to advise someone who's already doing everything right.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm on the hockey team, play a game every weekend. I ride my bike through the week, and, I eat this perfect diet, and some of them are on a vegan diet, or some of them are on paleo, or whatever they consider their perfect diet to be.
Yeah.
And they're just otherwise super healthy.
Yep.
And, it's there's a certain amount of luck in life. I mean, you got dealt a crappy hand.
Yeah,
friend.
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and at that point, all you can do is just be that friendly ear to say. I mean, I just reply, "Yeah, man, that sucks."
Yeah.
I feel it. It sucks.
Yeah, just like, it's, we all have our own personal challenges. For someone, it's cancer. Another person, it's diabetes, and I just, I got the AFib card, so you just do what you can.
So I have some more comments. It seemed I wasn't scrolling very well, so let me get caught up on those. I lost 20 pounds recently, and AFib is still the same. Yeah, that's frustrating, but
yeah.
Gail, good work, first of all.
Yeah, no kidding.
You better stop walking past construction sites. Yeah, but you know what? That doesn't mean you haven't improved your health.
No, that's a whole different issue,
Right.
We're talking just AFib. And I guess the message I would want people to get from me is that just because you change your life around as far as what you eat and your activity and all that, there's no guarantee it's going to fix or even improve your AFib. But you're definitely going to have all kinds of other health benefits for sure.
What do you make of Recky's point here?
Yeah,
I've heard thin athletic people are at a greater risk for AFib.
Yeah, I don't know about the thin part, but there's definitely tons of evidence that especially endurance athletes are prone to AFib. And so athletes in general, obviously, most athletes are endurance athletes, and even weightlifters, though, I've heard of, they tend to be prone to AFib. So there's obviously there must be some kind of connection to, stress on the heart.
There's a great book on that subject that I covered in my early days, probably a terrible quality video, but it's called The Haywire Heart.
Yep, I've heard of that
book.
And
it just studies endurance athletes and not just AFib. It actually goes through several, the stories of people who run a marathon and drop dead at the end. It covers, but AFib is the first thing they cover, which for me is great. But
yeah,
basically their conclusion at the end was there's two big risk categories in terms of exercise for atrial fibrillation. The first is you've been training at a high level most of your life, workouts consistently hitting that 2-hour mark. Okay. Because those people, they're putting the same kind of strain on their heart, creating the same kind of level of atrial stretch that an obese person does by walking around at that body weight all the time.
Yep.
So your heart, a strain is a strain, and having it too many hours a week, let's say. So if there's a sweet spot to exercise without concern, an hour a day, every study everywhere shows an hour a day, you're at the least risk for AFib.
Okay.
And as you start to approach the 2-hour mark, you start to level off with the population. And as you cross these guys who start doing the greater than 2-hour workouts, then your risk definitely goes up to pretty much the same as an obese person in your same age group.
Okay.
The second people that are at high risk are the midlife crisis guys like me who turn 40, turn 45, and then suddenly they get the CrossFit bug or the turn my life around bug, and God bless them, but they start really going hard, and they start the 2-hour marathons or the 4-hour bike rides. And these guys and ladies are at a particular risk if you smoke and drink, and then suddenly you turn your life around at 40, 45, 50, and go really hardcore endurance training 2-3 hours. They're at a very high risk for heart attack. So that's something to keep in mind. So when I started doing all my cardio, I wanted to make sure I wasn't, which is why I bought this book. And so if the Haywire Heart, if you want to work out with AFib, highly recommend this book. And not just for AFib, but for any cardiac concerns in terms of heavy workout. Like I used to powerlift, I used to bench press for 2.5, 3 hours.
Wow.
That's a lot of pressure on the heart if you're bench pressing like heavy weight, right?
Yep.
So I sort of saw myself, okay, I wasn't doing endurance, but it was still 2.5-hour workouts. Right?
Jeez.
So
now that's something
Recky was a cyclist. Heard, yeah. Are you still cycling? I hope you didn't give it up, Recky. Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the other thing too that I'll mention is that I was I worked out a lot when I was younger. So for like from age 20 to until I had my first AFib episode, actually, I worked out. I would lift for about 45 minutes every single day, and then I would run incredibly hard for about 30 to 45 minutes every day. I was an indoor runner. I was a treadmill runner. But I would crank that thing up to 12 miles an hour for 30 minutes straight. Like I was just and I did that every day for 7-8 years. I don't think that had anything to do with it, to be honest with you. But once I got AFib and I went down that whole journey, I backed off. In fact, after my ablation, I haven't lifted a weight since. I'm not saying that's right, but he does mainly walking now, so cool. But I don't run anymore either. I just walk every day, 2 to 3 miles a day.
I think walking is like the no-brainer advice for everyone. They
Yeah.
should be out walking an hour a day. If you don't know what to do for your AFib, just start by walking an hour a day or 2 half hours or three
Yep.
20 minutes. Work up to an hour a day. I just, like, I don't know anyone who went into AFib from walking,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So I know people who went on the Peloton and did the big workout and went into AFib, and I know people who go into AFib from, having a big meal, but I don't know anyone. I've never had anyone say, yeah, walking's a trigger for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So keep up the walking, Ricky. I mean, and the other thing that bothers me about walking is people don't feel like they can gain fitness. Like, you feel like you go walking and you stop making gains on your fitness, but you really don't. As long as you keep the walking up, your fitness continues to improve. So walking doesn't get nearly enough credit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people too, though, they associate exercise with weight loss. And as I always tell people, weight loss starts in the kitchen. It's the food, it's what you eat. Yeah, because I can lose weight starting tomorrow by just limiting my calories and not doing a single thing. How do I know that? Because that's how I used to do it. I mean, because like I said, I cut down my exercise tremendously after my ablation.
And when I do it like a 10K run, it's nearly impossible to stick to my calorie goal that day. I'm starving after that, but I can go for an hour walk and it's no problem.
Yeah. So I just always tell people, look, if weight loss is the goal, because everyone thinks, if I got to lose weight, I got to run like 5 miles a day. No, you really just need to watch what you eat. And you can just walk, and I promise you'll lose weight. That's kind of what I always tell people.
I see some more people jumping in to watch the show. So first of all, welcome to the AFIB Show. I'm your host, Big Northern Bear. We're here today with Travis Van Slooten, and he's host of the popular blog, Living with Atrial Fibrillation. We're taking questions from the audience. So Recky's come back. Yeah, it's the heart medications. That not only they make it difficult to raise the heart rate, but when you're first on them, it can be kind of scary because they have those side effects of making you feel dizzy and short of breath and
lethargic, I've heard.
I mean, my advice is if you're on like a metoprolol and you want to work out, your body will actually learn to cope. If you start pushing yourself harder, your body will actually learn to cope, and you'll actually figure out that, like, I have a window of time when I take my metoprolol, I take it at 6 a.m. every day. So I know if I work out at 8 a.m., my heart rate's going to be lower than if I work out at 2 p.m.
Sure.
So I've just learned that about myself, and I've learned it by just practicing it, right? So I would say, Recce, don't let the heart medications, I know your heart doesn't feel like it's working up to snuff perhaps, but go by how you feel. Don't go by your heart rate. Just go by how you're perceived. As a cyclist, you're probably really familiar with perceived exertion. I think that's the way it goes.
How much are you taking? How much are you taking a day?
I am in such a small dose these days. I take metoprolol 12.5 milligrams twice a day. It's like the tiniest.
Oh, okay.
Take a grain of rice and snap it in half. That's my metoprolol. I'm only on it because I'm on 50 milligrams of flecainide twice a day.
Oh, okay.
And if I don't take a little bit of beta blocker with it, I can go into atrial flutter because of the flecainide. So it's kind of like if I wasn't on the flecainide, I wouldn't need them.
Yeah.
Because I bet you my resting heart rate right now. Yeah, my resting heart rate is 42 right now sitting here.
Wow. So, yeah, my heart rate was 42 as well.
Yeah.
Because of all the running I used to do. And then, of course, after my ablations, it always went up. And then now it's still up because I just had an ablation again. But after
the main reason I'm getting an ablation is to get off the freaking metoprolol.
Oh, exactly.
My resting heart rate in my sleep is 32. It's too low, and I need to get off it. So, yeah.
I see the comment here from AFib patient experience. Yeah, I know it sucks, man. 41, right? I mean, I hear you. And she was
Steve.
Really healthy.
He was actually a guest on the show, and he's had an ablation and done quite well with it. So.
Okay. Is that Steve?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Steve.
Yeah.
I just watched some of your videos, by the way. Congratulations.
He makes good videos.
Yeah, congratulations on your ablation. I think he's like 2 years out now from his ablation. So.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, he was kind enough to come on the show. He's had very good experience with ablation. We're hoping
Yeah.
He's one of the permanent success people. Let's see. Nell M. Walking with my dogs uphill is hard on me. The dogs help me. Just started cardiac rehab. 4 months from arrest. Forever grateful for a second chance. Male 49. UK respect. Thank you. Keep at it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Nell, I don't know if you know much about my story, but I was a champion powerlifter, but I couldn't walk from my basement to my bedroom without stopping on the flight halfway for like a 30-second rest because my cardiac condition was so bad. So wherever you're at right now, I went from that to running 10Ks. It all started with walking. So keep walking the dogs and just push yourself just a little bit farther every week. You'll be shocked at where it can take you, regardless of where you started. The meds make me want to sleep all the time. I force myself to get up and walk each day. So, Travis, have you been on any of the meds long term?
No, I haven't been on any meds, which leads me to why I got an ablation is because I wanted to avoid all of this. Because I had heard about all these things and it freaked me out. And I'm not one to, I don't like, well, the irony is I like to drink, right? But I don't like drugs. Go figure that one out. But, but I was always afraid
I know a lot of guys who like drugs, but they don't like prescription drugs. So
yeah,
it doesn't
exactly.
surprise
Yeah.
me.
So I just didn't like, hearing all these things like being tired and lethargic. And I didn't even want, because most doctors always want to try, well, that's starting to change now, by the way. The first line of treatment has always been for years, we're going to put you on drugs first, see how you do. If they don't work or you're miserable, then we'll do an ablation. That has changed, although I don't know that's the official guideline now here in the United States. But yeah. I think it's changing now that ablation now really is kind of the first line because they're realizing these drugs don't really work that well and they have side effects, and inevitably most people end up needing an ablation anyway. So I know that whether it's
wishing they had just done it sooner.
Exactly. So whether it's an official guideline or not, most of the busy AFib centers and clinics and hospitals in the States, they don't even mess around with the drugs. They'll just you're definitely a candidate for ablation.
I'd say this is a big difference between the U.S. and places like Canada where we have socialized healthcare, because the guideline is the meds, and so long as the meds are working, no ablation.
Yeah.
They just don't do it, and I'm sure it's an economic decision. So when they put me on the waiting list for an ablation, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's just, because I'm worried that a bureaucrat will change their mind. So Recky's on 25 milligrams metoprolol once a day, propan. So you're on a couple propan. Going to screw up 3 times a day. So yeah, you're feeling that. I was on metoprolol 100 milligrams 3 times a day when I started, and that kicked my ass.
So what's the feel?
That was a living nightmare.
I've never been on drugs because I went right from no AFib to AFib to a lot of AFib, and I went straight to an ablation. And
well, you've been hungover, right?
Yes.
So when you're hungover and you wake up and you sit up and the room spins for a minute?
Yeah. And
then when you stand up, the room spins for a minute? Well, that's your life on a big dose of beta blockers.
Oh,
just like that.
That would be
Get on the treadmill, start exerting yourself. The room spins for a minute. You feel weak. You feel like you have 25% of the energy you'd normally have, especially at first. It's brutal. It can be brutal.
Oh, and that's on a low dose, or is that a heavy dose of that?
Well, I started on a heavy dose,
okay.
And I think the way to do it is to exercise and develop your cardio fitness to the point where you can be on the lowest effective dose. I would say always for beta blockers, I never tell people try to get off them. I say work with your doctor to find your lowest effective dose for AFib.
Yeah.
Because if you can stay AFib free on 25 milligrams a day, why be at 100? So work to find the lowest effective dose. And then when you're at that dose, don't be one of these, I got to get off this at all costs. No, it's working for you. You have the minimal side effects, discover a bit of a balance there. So, yeah, but it can be brutal. And Yeah, so I understand. Stephen, thank you. 2 years ablation, still AFib free. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
great. And he has a little 2-minute AFib ablation encouragement video that I created, and it's still people still watch that all the time. So
Awesome. Yeah,
wow,
I went almost 8 years on my first one. So yeah, it's awesome.
that's also 8 years that your AFib didn't progress.
Yes.
So people look at that as, oh, see, you just have to get another ablation, so that didn't work. But no, that's 8 years, man. That's 8 years with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
8 years your disease didn't progress.
Yeah.
For a day, for an outpatient thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't have to be on any drugs, and I didn't have to, I lived my life. It was awesome. So, which is why when it came back, it kind of threw me for a loop there.
Now, wow, I will like now and sub. Thank you. Oh, thank you for the sub. Proper good info and all for free is brilliant. Yeah, I mean, we're in the share economy with YouTube and blogs.
There you go.
Information liberation. Now, if you check my channel, one of my first videos is how to work out on your beta blocker. And I'm actually a former strength and conditioning coach and a personal trainer certified. So I actually lay it down for you. There's a whole program you can work through on your beta blocker. I know it works because I did it. So there's a PowerPoint you can print out and everything and follow along. And I give you the formula to calculate a target heart rate on your beta blocker or teach you how to use the perceived exertions. Highly recommend that for you. So
wow, what a great
lots of
resource.
great comments today. Lots of great ones. Really glad everyone's here. So what next? Like, this is a touch-up. What was the need? Like, why did they figure you needed a touch-up versus a full ablation?
Yeah, so I had the first ablation, went almost 8 years. All of a sudden, out of the blue, I had atrial flutter. Had to be cardioverted, so that was my 5th cardioversion.
Right.
And then, so at that point, it was obvious, okay, it's returned. It's time to go back in for a tune-up. So I had the second ablation. It was a pretty extensive ablation, actually. I was surprised at that. It was during that ablation they had to ablate the LAA, the left atrial appendage.
Yeah.
And because of that, they said you will now either have to be on a blood thinner for life or have the Watchman. And so it was like, well, yeah, we're obviously going to do the Watchman because I'm not going to be on blood thinners at age 50 for the rest of my life. So we scheduled that. And my doctor automatically, when he puts the Watchman in, he maps the heart for any activity. And if he sees any, he buttons it down and then finishes up the procedure by putting the Watchman in. And so I had, after my second ablation, I had a couple breakthrough events during the blanking period, the 3-month recovery period. Right. I had, 3 atrial flutter episodes that were about 2 hours long each. Thankfully, they all terminated on their own. But because I had those breakthroughs, he knew there were still some spots that needed to be touched up. So when he went in, sure enough, he did find some spots. So that's why he had to do the touch-up. So it was really a Watchman procedure first and kind of a touch-up ablation second. I don't know if every doctor does that. They might do them separately or not at all. They might not even do the ablation. But again, all the more reason to go to an experienced EP so that they can tackle that, the ablation and the Watchman in one procedure.
Right. So as a technology savvy person,
yeah,
you are, what kind of technology do you employ to monitor and treat your AFib?
Yeah, so the only thing I use, quite honestly, well, I do my blanking updates on my blog every week. I do an update. And so I use this wireless, it's really cool. It's a wireless cardio blood pressure monitor. This is just, honestly, you don't really need to monitor your blood pressure, but it's all wireless. Yeah. And you can see it's pretty compact, about the size of an iPhone, so I could travel with this if I wanted.
That's cool.
But I only use this just because I'm curious what my blood pressure is these days. I use a pulse ox, just a Bluetooth monitor here just to make sure my pulse ox is good. which again has nothing really to do with AFib, but I just like to check that. The main thing I use that I've used since day one, I cannot recommend this device enough, and that is the Cardia heart monitor. And I have the 6-lead monitor here, but they also have a single-lead credit card monitor. It is literally the size of a credit card, so you can put it in your wallet. But this baby here is an absolute lifesaver because I use this whenever my episodes rear their ugly head. This is what I use to capture them so I can send them to my doctor and he confirms for me, yep, you got flutter, or no, it's AFib, or it's just tachycardia or whatever. But this is the baby that I don't go anywhere without this, like when I travel and stuff. But that's really all I use. There's nothing really else. I've been extremely fortunate that my ablations have been very successful in the sense that I haven't had to take drugs. I haven't had to have a lot of extensive monitoring. So.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I guess in your case, so like for me, blood pressure was a problem.
Yep.
So, I mean, clearly my uncontrolled blood pressure was contributing to my AFib, because once I got it under control, my AFib almost vanished.
Yeah.
So it's again, log for you, my friendly viewers, log the most likely suspects.
Yep.
If you have high blood pressure, that's a likely suspect. If you have sleep apnea, check your sleep reports and get your apnea looked after. Like, just go after the likely causes. And then we have friends like our athletes and these 35-year-olds who've done nothing wrong. I mean, but those are really the rare cases. They're not the common cases.
Yeah.
Most of us can probably find a little something we could tweak. Maybe we're drinking a lot. Maybe we smoke. Sleep quality, or just we don't deal with stress very well. I mean, if you take honest stock of your life.
Yep.
You don't strike me as someone who has a problem with stress, but.
Yeah, I'm not, like I said, man, this is another reason why I don't really put myself out there other than my blog, is not only am I not a doctor, but how can I possibly preach to people, like telling them to do the things like you're telling them to do, when I can't follow them myself? I can't honestly sleep at night in good conscience telling people, hey, you got to be on the Mediterranean diet, when I'm not on it myself. My sleep, I have the crappiest sleep probably in the world. I've had insomnia for years. I get 5, maybe 6 hours of sleep a night if I'm lucky. And it's been that way for years. I did have a sleep study done. I actually went in and did a sleep study, and I have a blog about that, pictures of it and everything, and I went through that. They didn't find any sleep apnea. Well, they found minor occurrences, but the way they graded, I guess, I was like low risk, like get out of here. You don't.
Yeah, most people have a tiny bit.
Yeah, that's what they said. They said
yeah.
Almost everybody's got some, but they said you don't need even a mouth guard or anything. You're good. So I don't have that going, at least. I mean, I have that going for me in that I don't have that. So, but I did rule that out, though, because I thought, well, heck, maybe if I have sleep apnea, maybe that's causing my AFib.
So how quickly do you think then? Let me put you on the spot then.
Yeah.
And first of all, honesty is always appreciated.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. And I think as a content creator, I understand, like I've got videos telling people how to lose weight, but I've regained about 20% of my weight I lost.
Yeah.
So there's this imposter syndrome. You're like, what am I doing giving people advice?
Yeah.
But you know what? I've improved my health greatly, and I'm just going to contend. And I've got learning experiences to share. So I think that's totally fair. And I think I lost where I was originally going with this, but
you're going to put me on the spot with something. I don't know what. But...
Yeah. So I think though, the thing I appreciate about your blog is you're upfront about, okay, this has helped people, and here are some studies and some data, like the Mediterranean diet, and here's a book from the experts.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So even though you haven't been the best dieter in the world, that person who comes to your blog with the motivation, you've given them a starting point to go to. So I don't.
Yeah. No, it's just, would you call it the imposter syndrome? Yeah, I just suffer with it from a lot because I just feel guilty. Like I can't be someone that tells people to all these things to do when I don't do them myself. I suppose I could couch it in like, hey, I don't do this, but here's what people do, and I kind of do that actually. But
Well, you've
I
done
don't
it
know.
now, and it's too late now.
Yeah, exactly. But the funny thing is, the one article that I was really passionate about was that article about how to lose weight, which was, like I said, just counting calories, right?
Yeah.
I got so much hate email from that and people saying, oh, it's bogus, it doesn't work, and you're a fraud, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dang, I was like pretty proud of that piece. Like, I was actually being honest with people, like what works for me. And it was the one thing no one liked to read. So, and yet on the flip side, the article.
I mean, obviously, I believe counting calories helps.
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah. So, but then like the article on the Mediterranean diet, which I'm not very passionate about, that is more of an article I wrote just saying, hey, based on what I've learned, here's what could help. People love that and found it useful. So, yeah.
I think diet particularly creates internet drama, discussions of diet, especially like a lot of people have tied their diet up with like vegetarianism has a moral component that's packaged along with it.
Yep.
And then the paleo is not a diet; it's like a movement. So it has all that sort of. It comes with its own culture. And sadly, I think nutrition research in general is just lets everyone down because you can literally go into nutrition research and you can find every diet is the best diet, or you can find any diet is the worst diet. Whatever you happen to think, you'll find a study that backs you up.
Yep.
Whatever your belief is. Carnivore, paleo, the Twinkie diet, you'll find this. There is like you pointed out, there is an actual study that shows the Twinkie diet can help you lose weight and improve some of your measurements, right?
Yep,
your lab
absolutely.
results. So,
yep.
I mean, nutrition science is an absolute mess, and it's partly because you can't just take human beings and lock them into a cage and force feed them a diet for 6 months because it's inhumane.
Yeah.
So the evidence collection method is messy to begin with. So, but I think to me the whole diet thing is, first of all, just get better habits. Get better dietary habits. Don't focus on the diet.
Yeah.
Like when you're on point with your diet, I'm going to guess it's a little more than just logging your calories. Like you're probably like, you have some habits that kick in that you maintain that almost become like a ritual.
Yeah, the habits being I'll eat kind of the same things, I'll not do the same things, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I always say
about
about
mindfulness, right? Like just logging your calories makes you mindful while you eat.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what works for me, right? Like, but I understand that for like a lot of people, counting calories would be a nightmare and have the opposite effect. But for me, that's what works. But for someone else, just following the Mediterranean diet will help. So that's why I say experiment, see what works for you. And as I told you before, for me, my goal now is to simply, this is literally the only thing I think about. I just want to eat better today than I ate yesterday. I don't even necessarily want to eat healthy. I just want to eat healthier. So if I had 2 candy bars yesterday, let's just see if we can get by with 1 today. So that's that's what I do now. So,
yeah, I think that's good. I mean, the best diet's really the one you can stick to, because you can be on the best diet in the world. You can be on you can go into these macro trackers and measure every micronutrient and just get it all perfect. But if you can only do it for 2 days,
yeah, exactly.
You're better off with an imperfect diet that you stick to 6 days a week regularly.
Yeah.
And the same with fitness. There's no right fitness program. It's what you pick up something you enjoy well enough that you can be consistent about it. So.
Yeah, and it's gotten eating better. Again, I don't use the word healthier. That doesn't really work for me. But what works for, one of the blessings of getting older is your body tells you pretty quickly what you can get away with. And unfortunately, as you get older, at least for me, I get heartburn pretty easily, and I feel like crap if I eat the wrong stuff or too much. So fortunately, my body tells me pretty quickly, like, oh yeah, you used to be able to eat those 3 candy bars, but now when you do that, you have heartburn all night. So,
Right.
you start to learn, okay, fine, I'm only going to eat 1 now, I guess, because if I eat more than that, I'm going to get heartburn. So there's a blessing of being older, because I think your body does tell you very quickly what you can get away with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. With age comes wisdom and more sore muscles.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanna be respectful of your time. We've gone on quite a while now, and
Yeah.
And so what I always like to give my guests like the closing thought. And so in your case, because you bring some years of experience and putting yourself out there, what do you think is the one thing most that should be talked about more that isn't, perhaps?
As it pertains to AFib or treating your
Yeah,
AFib, or
yeah. Let's say if there's some advice that new AFibbers should get but rarely do.
well, the most important thing is arm yourself with information and be your own advocate. That's the most important thing, because sadly, a lot of doctors, especially like the first line doctors you're going to come into contact with when you're first diagnosed, aren't going to be the best doctors for you. Um, and even a cardiologist that you might seek, a lot of times these guys they're just, I'm being honest, a lot of them aren't good. So, and you can't, and the way our healthcare system is these days, where you're just like, you get 15 minutes with a doctor, and like you said, I know it's probably worse in Canada where they got these strict guidelines. That attitude is the same down here in the States. It's just maybe it's not coded, but these doctors are trained. This is what we do. This is our guidelines, and this is, and they don't think outside the box or anything like that. So like they're not taking into consideration all the things we've been talking about here. And a lot of doctors too they just don't have time. So it's just easier for them to say, look, take these meds and let me know how it goes. And only then, when it gets really bad, then we can talk about ablations. So be your own advocate. Arm yourself with information so you can determine your own course, your own journey. That's the most important thing you can do. Second to that, though, is then finding a really good EP, an electrophysiologist, not just a cardiologist, but an EP. Find the absolute most experienced expert EP you can find in your area, and be willing to travel if necessary to see such a doctor, particularly if you're going to go down the ablation route, because the ablations, while most of them are safe, even by inexperienced operators, they're just not nearly as effective as they can be if they're not done by someone that knows what they're doing. So
Right.
those are the main things I tell people to this day is, hey, look, arm yourself with information, be your own advocate, and find the best EP you can possibly find. That's what I tell everybody.
That's good advice. I mean, I think a lot of people are, I hate to stereotype, but maybe a little more in the older generation. They just, whatever the doctor in front of them advises, they just go with it. They don't go and hit, let's say, Google, and you can actually do damage by Googling the wrong advice.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, certainly you should be looking up treatment options and medication options and lifestyle interventions that you can do. You should at least be aware of this stuff. And so I think that's really, really great advice.
Yeah, and it's beyond just Google too. It's watching YouTube videos like your channel and reading my blog and going to forums and just soaking it all in. And you're not going to do this overnight. I mean, this is a journey. So, but I can't tell you how many times I get emails from people that say, oh, I was diagnosed with AFib and they put me on a bunch of meds and now I feel like crap and I don't know what to do. It's like, that's so sad because, and I just tell them, look, first thing you got to do is, here's what you got to do. Read through my blog, go to this channel, go to this forum, soak it all in, And then if you have questions, let me know, and then I typically will guide them along and kind of help them. But because a lot of times they're on medications when they might not even need to be on medications, or they're on medications they shouldn't be on.
Yeah.
So
I think that's an advantage you have in the blog format, because it's a lot easier to come to a blog and sort of get like the 5 pieces of information you need, where if you come to my YouTube channel, you got to watch a 10-minute video about just one thing, and then so it's a little harder to categorize
yep.
the information. Although it's nice to just be able to chill and listen to a video.
Oh, absolutely.
As well, right? So
yeah.
So I think it's great. I mean, I just feel like we're just in this wonderful age where we can share information, and I hope we as a civilization don't screw it up.
Exactly.
Well, Mr. Van Slooten, this has been excellent having you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Yeah, we had a fair amount of viewers. Not everyone was so talkative, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I feel like we've had a great discussion. I hope we can have you back sometime, maybe on a panel show.
Yeah, you can invite me anytime. I'd be more than happy to join. And I'll just, anybody listening to this or watching this, if you have any questions for me, just go to my blog. There's a contact option. I answer, and I'm very proudful of this. I answer every single email, and I've gotten hundreds of them, thousands of them over the years. I answer every single one of them. So.
Thank you, Hamster House. Yeah, I had fun too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, and so guys, living with atrial fibrillation, in the description is the website. He also has an email alert, so when he publishes an article, you'll be notified about that.
Yep.
So be sure to sign up for his email address. And welcome to everyone who's come to my channel for the first time. We're really happy to have you. Most of my content is for AFIBBERS, so be sure to drop a like and subscribe and all that good YouTube stuff that helps the channel. You know, like I'm trying to build a community here on YouTube for people with cardiac conditions, sort of a patient-to-patient focused community. So help spread the word and check out some of the back catalog. You might find videos about dealing with cardiac anxiety or struggling to lose weight for your AFib and that. So hopefully there's some stuff in there in my back catalog for you. And again, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'm going to play us out.
All right, awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And don't forget to leave your studio open while the video uploads.
All right, I'll do that.
Okay. Thanks a lot, everyone.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, have a great day.
All right.
The AFIB Show brings you stories, interviews, lifestyle coaching, and information meant entirely for those with atrial fibrillation, atrial flutter, troublesome ectopic beats, or other heart rhythm disturbances.
Always do it on my own, so I got